meteorological report of the expedition of HMS Beagle. That came out in 5 volumes from 1840 to 1848. The publication of the first volume of Ruskin's Modern Painters in 1843 began a 30-year personal and professional connection with the author. Soon afterwards, the young George Smith was given control of the publishing department, and he began to improve the firm's profits by shrewd reorganization and the successful publication of Richard Henry Horne's A New Spirit of the Age, and Leigh Hunt's Imagination and Fancy. The illness and death of his father in 1846 meant that he became responsible at the age of 22 for both the firm and the family. The publication of the best-selling Jane Eyre in October 1847 added to the firm's prestige and profits, and Currer Bell became a friend as well as a correspondent of Smith and his reader, William Smith Williams, and the manager of the firm's clerks, James Taylor. Through his connection with her, Smith came to know Harriet Martineau, Elizabeth Gaskell, and Thackeray, and published several of their works. Thackeray's daughter, Annie, recalled Smith as a kind-hearted family friend who gave practical help to her and her sister after their father's sudden death in 1863. George Smith's kindness to Charlotte and her family was also to continue. In January 1849, when Anne Bronte was already very ill, George Smith recommended the family should ask the distinguished specialist in tuberculosis, Dr. John Forbes, to visit her. Charlotte and her father did not think any really useful end could be answered by a visit from Dr. Forbes himself, and instead she described the local Dr. Teal's diagnosis and treatment, asking for Dr. Forbes' opinion on it. In literary matters of this period, Smith wisely refused to publish Charlotte's ill-considered satirical A Word to the Quarterly as a preface to her new novel, Shirley. She was very miffed by what had been written in the Quarterly about Shirley. Elizabeth Rigby had declared in the review that Jane Eyre was throughout the personification of an unregenerate and undisciplined spirit. No Christian grace is perceptible upon her. Altogether, the autobiography of Jane Eyre is preeminently an anti-Christian composition. As a riposte to this attack, Charlotte wrote what she pretended was a confidential letter to a lady friend. Currer Bell claims in this essay that he is convinced the writer of the Quarterly is an old woman, and wishes to assure her that Currer Bell has not long forfeited the society of the female sex. You should see, ma'am, the figure Currer Bell can cut at a small party. You should watch him assisting at a tea table, and see how young ladies make him slippers for his gouty foot. Oh dear. Both Mr. Williams and George Smith realized that this feeble satire would be entirely inappropriate as a preface to a new novel. Jane Eyre was a bestseller, and Shirley would be seized on with an enthusiasm that would be hampered rather than increased by a sour preface. George Smith was also an expert financial advisor for Charlotte. He recommended her to invest the money she received in reduced bank annuities, and we know that in 1854, at the time of her marriage to Arthur Nichols, she possessed £1,678, 9 shillings and 9 pence in annuities. Though Smith described himself as a hard-headed and close-fisted man of business, he continued to give Charlotte more books, as well as fair payment for her works. Charlotte found him attractive, but she defined her attitude as a natural liking and sense of something congenial. I am content to have him as a friend, and pray God to continue to me the common sense to look on one so young, so rising, and so hopeful in no other light. It was as well she did, for George Smith told Mrs. Humphrey Ward that he never was in the least bit in love with Charlotte Bronte. I never could have loved any woman who had not some charm or grace of person, and Charlotte Bronte had none. I liked her and was interested in her, and I admired her, especially when she was in Yorkshire and I was in London. I never was coxcomb enough to suppose she was in love with me, but I believe that my mother was at one time alarmed. Certainly, though Mrs. Smith treated her, as Charlotte said, with a serene, equable kindness, she opposed her son's plan that Charlotte should join him and his sister in Edinburgh in June 1850. But Charlotte assured Ellen Nussey that she and George Smith understood each other very well. We both know the wide breach time has made between us, my 8 years of seniority, to say nothing of lack of all pretensions to beauty. They're a perfect safeguard. I should not in the least fear to go with him to China. So she joined him in Edinburgh, and as she told Mr. Williams, I always liked Scotland as an idea, but now, as a reality, it furnished me with some hours as happy almost as any I ever spent. She had seen Edinburgh with its couchant, Craig Lion, Scots monuments and Arthur's Seat.